My wife stole $250, $0 from our joint account with her boss, then filed for divorce claiming I was abusive. Now she's demanding half of our inherited $600, $0 estate, and I just found out she's been secretly negotiating with a lawyer to take everything. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never saw it coming. Honestly, I thought I knew everything about Sarah, my wife for 8 years, the woman I married, the woman I thought I could trust with my life. But one day, everything just shattered in a way I couldn't have predicted. It all started with a strange feeling, like I was missing something obvious, something I should have seen but didn't. And then I found out she'd been cheating on me with her boss, Mark, and worse. She'd stolen $250,000 from our joint account. Yeah, $250,000. And she was planning to take everything else, including the inheritance we were counting on. It was a normal Tuesday morning when I first noticed something was off. I was checking our bank account as I did every few days just to keep an eye on things. We've always been pretty careful with money, especially since we inherited that estate a couple of years ago, around $600, $0 split between us. It's not a fortune, but it's enough to make you feel safe. Anyway, I was scrolling through the transactions, and I saw a transfer I didn't recognize, $250, $0 to some account I'd never heard of. My stomach clenched. I clicked further, trying to make sense of it. That kind of money gone. It was impossible. I called the bank immediately, but they couldn't tell me anything more than that it was authorized by Sarah's name with her signature. I couldn't sleep that night. The more I thought about it, the more I remembered her strange phone calls, the way she'd been acting distant lately, avoiding eye contact, lying about where she was when I asked. And then I remembered that afternoon she was supposed to meet her boss, Mark, for a quick coffee, but I'd seen her sneaking out of the house looking tense and hurried. I'd asked her about it and she'd brushed me off, said I was paranoid. That night I looked through her phone and that's when I found it, a string of texts, explicit messages, promises of meeting up. They'd been sleeping together, I was sure of it. It wasn't just an affair, it was a full-blown betrayal. I felt numb at first. My wife, Sarah, the woman I'd trusted with everything, was cheating on me with her boss and she'd stolen our money. The betrayal cut deep. I confronted her that night, showing her the bank statements, the texts. She got defensive, of course. "You're overreacting," she said. "Mark is just a friend. You're crazy if you think I'd do anything with him." But I knew better. I'd seen the evidence. She was lying again and again. Her face twisted with anger and contempt, like I was the one in the wrong, not her. She accused me of being paranoid, of not trusting her, but I could see the guilt in her eyes. That moment was the beginning of the end for us. After that, I went through a roller coaster of emotions. The initial shock turned into anger, then sadness, and finally a cold resolve. I couldn't believe I'd been played for a fool for so long. The woman I loved, the woman I thought was my partner, was out there lying, cheating, stealing from us. And she was planning to take everything, our inheritance, the house, whatever she could get her hands on. I had to decide what to do next. Part of me wanted to just leave her, walk away, and forget the whole thing. But another part, the angry part, wanted her to pay, to see her suffer just a little for what she'd done. I knew I had to be smart about it, though. I couldn't just lash out blindly. I had to plan my revenge carefully and coldly. Because if she thought she could get away with it, I'd make sure she didn't. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became that I needed to get my ducks in a row. Sarah was a manipulative woman. She always knew how to twist things to her advantage. That's what made her so dangerous. I realized I couldn't confront her again without a plan, especially knowing she was already negotiating with lawyers behind my back. I started digging into everything I could find: her emails, her phone, even her social media accounts. I needed to understand her moves, her mindset, her next steps. One thing I uncovered was her secret meetings with a lawyer named Linda. I found emails where Sarah was discussing protecting her rights and getting what she deserves. She was clearly trying to carve out her own share of the estate, even though I'd been told she was only entitled to half, which, considering the inheritance, was already a huge chunk. But Sarah, she wanted more. She always was the bitchy type, the kind who'd lie through her teeth just to get what she wanted. I could tell she was calculating, cold, and willing to burn everything down to get her way. I started to piece together her plan. She was trying to spin the story that I was abusive, totally false, of course, just to get the courts to see her as the victim. She'd been telling her lawyer that I was controlling and violent, which was a complete lie. I never laid a hand on her, but she loved to play the victim when it suited her. I remember she once told me I was gaslighting her whenever I called her out on her lies. That was her tactic: twist the narrative, make herself seem innocent, and then use the legal system to her advantage. I knew I had to act fast before she could push forward with her schemes. So I started gathering evidence. I printed out our bank statements, saved all the texts, and even hired a private investigator to look into her meetings with Linda. I wanted proof of her plotting, of her trying to manipulate the system. I also made copies of her emails, especially those where she was discussing how to get half of everything and protect her future. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about her betrayal, her lying, her sneaky manipulations. I felt like I was living in some twisted soap opera, except this was real, and I was the one getting screwed over. Meanwhile, Sarah kept up her act, pretending to be the perfect wife. She'd come home, act like everything was fine, and then throw in little jabs about how I was crazy for suspecting her. She accused me of trying to control her, all while secretly plotting her next move. I could see right through her. I knew she was already negotiating with her lawyer to take everything she could: the house, the estate, even the little savings I'd managed to squirrel away. She was determined to come out on top, no matter what it took. That's when I decided I couldn't just sit back and wait for her to destroy everything. I had to act. I started talking to a lawyer of my own, someone who specialized in divorce and asset protection. I knew I had to be prepared for a fight, and I had to protect what was rightfully mine. I also set up a bank account in my name alone, just in case she tried to drain the joint funds further. Every day, I felt more like a chess player, planning my next move while she was busy trying to lie and cheat her way to victory. The thing is, I never thought I'd be in a situation like this. I always believed in honesty, loyalty, and fairness, but Sarah, she proved me wrong every step of the way. It's like I married a different person, someone who's willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate just to get ahead. The worst part, I still loved her, or at least I did until I saw her true face. Now I just feel numb and furious at the same time. How could someone I trusted so blindly turn into this scheming, selfish bitch? The betrayal hits harder every day. I keep asking myself if I ever really knew her, or if I was just fooling myself the whole time. After I started putting my plan into motion, the situation escalated faster than I expected. I thought I had some control, some time to prepare, but Sarah's behavior became even more erratic. She was pushing hard to get her lawyer to finalize everything: the house, the inheritance, all of it. Meanwhile, I kept collecting evidence, making sure I had everything in order. I knew I needed to be one step ahead because she was already trying to spin stories about me being the bad guy. That's what she does: lie, manipulate, and try to turn everyone against me. One night I came back home and found her packing boxes, just like that. I asked what she was doing and she snapped at me, saying she was taking what's hers because I was abusive and controlling. She looked at me with that smirk like she already knew she had the upper hand. I could see her eyes glinting with that bitchy, entitled look she always had when she was about to lie her ass off. She kept repeating how I'd never loved her, how I'd been violent, all bullshit, of course. But she knew how to turn things around, make herself the victim, and that's exactly what she was trying to do. That moment, I realized I couldn't trust her anymore. She was determined to leave with everything, even though I'd been the one working my ass off to build our life, to save for the future, to protect what was ours. She wanted to walk away with half the estate, plus whatever she could squeeze out of me through the divorce. She was demanding half of the inheritance, claiming she was entitled to it because she was married to me. The nerve. I knew she'd already been secretly negotiating with her lawyer, Linda, trying to get the court to see her as the victim. I'd overheard her on the phone, whispering about getting what she deserves, about protecting her rights, and how she was going to take everything from me if she had to. That's when I decided I had to fight fire with fire. I called my lawyer the very next day. I told him everything, her manipulations, her lies, her sneaky meetings with Linda. I also told him I suspected she was planning to claim abuse just to get the judge on her side. I wanted to be prepared. I even hired a private investigator to follow her, just to confirm her plans and catch her in the act if she did something shady. I felt sick every time I thought about how she was orchestrating her moves, trying to squeeze me dry while pretending to be the perfect wife. Meanwhile, Sarah kept up her act of innocence, crying about how she just wants to be happy, how I never appreciated her, and how I was controlling her every move. Yeah, right. She was just trying to cover her tracks. Every lie she told, every fake smile, it made me more furious. I'd caught her in so many lies already, but I knew the worst was yet to come. She was already talking to Linda about how to get her hands on the estate, and I had to stop her before she managed to pull off something even more damaging. I started documenting everything, her calls, her texts, her meetings, even the way she was acting around the house. I didn't want to give her any room to twist the story. I needed solid proof that she was planning to cheat me out of what's rightfully mine. I also made sure to keep a close eye on the bank accounts. I set up alerts for any large transactions, and I moved some of the money into accounts only I could access. I knew she'd try to drain our shared funds or find some way to manipulate the situation. I couldn't let that happen. Honestly, I felt like I was living in some nightmare. I couldn't believe the woman I married was capable of all this. The betrayal wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the fact that she'd lied and cheated her way through our entire marriage. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I was so blind to her true nature. But I also realized that I had to be strong, because if I didn't fight for what's mine, she'd take everything. I wasn't going to let her ruin me, not without a fight. I still had some dignity left, and I was determined to protect it, no matter what. The days that followed were a blur of planning, confrontations, and quiet strategizing. I knew I had to be 2 steps ahead of Sarah and her lawyer, Linda. Every morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach, wondering what new lie she'd come up with or what sneaky move she was trying to pull. I kept reviewing my evidence, making sure I was ready for whatever courtroom game she thought she could play. At the same time, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of betrayal that cut through everything. The woman I'd loved, the woman I thought I knew, was now just a stranger, a schemer who'd do anything to get her hands on my money and the life we built. One afternoon, I decided I had enough of her manipulations. I sat her down in the living room, a house that suddenly felt like it belonged to a stranger. I told her I knew about her meetings with Linda, about her plans to claim half the estate, and about her lies. I looked her straight in the eyes and told her I wasn't going to let her take everything without a fight. She scoffed at me, trying to act innocent, but her eyes flickered with guilt and anger. She spat out some bullshit about how I was accusing her without proof, how she was the victim here, and how I was controlling and paranoid. That's when I snapped. I told her I had enough of her lies, enough of her manipulations. I showed her the evidence, the emails, the bank statements, the recorded meetings. Her face twisted with rage and contempt. She told me I was a terrible husband, a controlling asshole who didn't deserve her. She said I was just jealous because she was more successful than me, that I was just trying to keep her down. I felt my blood boil. I realized then that she was beyond reasoning. She was hell-bent on destroying us, on taking everything I had worked for. I knew I had to act fast or she'd destroy everything. I called my lawyer again that night. We went over the game plan. I wanted a restraining order on her. I wanted to freeze any assets she might try to access, and I wanted to get a court order to prevent her from selling or transferring anything without approval. I also instructed my lawyer to prepare for a divorce filing, but I told him I wasn't planning to just give her what she wanted. I was ready for a fight. I knew she'd try to spin this as me being abusive or controlling, but I had my proof. I also secretly hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her. I needed to know if she was talking to other lawyers or making deals behind my back. Meanwhile, Sarah was getting more aggressive. She started throwing temper tantrums, crying about how I was ruining her life, how she deserved happiness, and how she'd do whatever it took to get what's hers. The bitchy side of her was coming out in full force. She even tried to guilt-trip me, saying I was terrible for fighting her, that I was breaking up the family over money. I just looked at her and thought, "You're damn right I'm fighting. I'd rather lose everything than let her walk away with what's not hers." I kept reminding myself that I'd done nothing wrong. I was the one who kept everything together, who worked hard for our future. The biggest surprise came when I found out she'd been secretly negotiating with Linda to settle outside of court, trying to get a quick deal to take everything. I was furious. I knew she was trying to cut me out completely, to make sure she'd come out on top no matter what. I confronted her again and she just sneered, telling me I was too late to stop her, that she had lawyered up and that I was losing. That was the moment I realized she was dead serious about destroying us. She didn't care about the truth or fairness, only about getting her way, no matter what. Honestly, I felt exhausted but also more determined than ever. I knew I couldn't let her win. I had to protect what was mine, not just the money but the dignity of what we once had. I started preparing for the worst, gathering even more evidence, talking to financial experts, and making sure my legal team was ready for a fight. I also started to accept that maybe, just maybe, this marriage was beyond saving. The woman I loved was gone, replaced by someone who only cared about money and revenge. It was a brutal realization, but I knew I had to face it. Because at the end of the day, I wasn't just fighting for my money. I was fighting to keep my integrity intact. The situation reached a boiling point when I finally got a court date for a temporary injunction. I needed to stop Sarah from doing anything rash, selling assets, draining the account, or worse, before we even got to the divorce proceedings. I hired a good lawyer, someone who specialized in financial fraud and asset protection, and we worked tirelessly to prepare our case. I handed over all my evidence, the emails, the bank statements, the recorded meetings, everything that proved her scheming. It felt like I was laying my life bare, but I knew I had no choice. If I didn't act fast, she'd take everything and I'd never get it back. The day of the hearing, I was a nervous wreck. Sarah showed up with her lawyer, Linda, looking smug and confident. She was dressed to impress, with that bitchy smirk glued to her face. She kept insisting she was the victim, that I was abusive and controlling, and that she deserved half of everything because she was married to me. The judge listened carefully, reviewing the evidence I presented and hearing our arguments. I could see Sarah's lawyer trying to twist the facts, trying to paint her as the innocent victim, but I had the facts on my side. When the judge finally made her decision, she granted the temporary injunction. Sarah was ordered to stay away from the house, not to transfer or sell any assets, and to cease all negotiations with Linda. It was a small victory, but it felt like I'd taken a breath of air after drowning for weeks. Still, I knew this was just the beginning. Sarah's lawyer had already started working on a settlement, trying to get her what she wanted outside the courtroom. I could tell she was desperate to avoid a full-blown trial, but I wasn't backing down. I had too much at stake: my money, my reputation, and my future. In the aftermath, I started to feel a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief because I'd managed to stop her for now, to protect what little I still had. Anger because I knew she was capable of anything: lying, cheating, manipulating, all to get her way. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I'd trusted her implicitly, and she turned out to be nothing but a scheming bitch. I also couldn't shake off the feeling of betrayal. How did someone I loved so much become this person? How did she think she could just take everything I worked for and walk away? I spent sleepless nights thinking about what I'd do next. Part of me wanted to just cut her out completely, start over somewhere new, and forget she ever existed. But another part, the stubborn part, knew I had to fight for what's rightfully mine. I started talking to a financial advisor about protecting my assets, setting up separate accounts and maybe even filing for full custody of our joint estate. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I was determined to stand my ground no matter how hard it was. Looking back, I realize how much this ordeal has changed me. I used to believe in love, in honesty and fairness. Now I see that sometimes people are just out for themselves. Sarah showed me her true colors: selfish, manipulative, willing to lie and cheat to get what she wants. It's a bitter lesson, but one I had to learn the hard way. If I could give anyone advice, it's this: trust is earned, not given blindly. And if you ever find yourself in a situation where someone's betraying you like this, don't wait, fight for your rights, protect what's yours, and never let anyone take you down without a fight. In the days that followed, I felt like I was walking through a fog of relief, anger, and exhaustion all at once. The court's decision to impose the temporary injunction was a small win, but I knew Sarah wasn't done fighting. She was already scheming behind the scenes, trying to find ways to bypass the legal protections I'd put in place. I kept my guard up, stayed vigilant, and continued gathering evidence. Every day was a reminder of how deeply I'd been betrayed, but also of how much I still had to fight for. One evening, I finally sat down and took stock of everything. The house was quiet, eerily so, and I felt a strange mix of sadness and resolve. I'd lost a lot, not just money, but part of my trust in someone I once loved. Yet I also realized I'd gained clarity. I saw her for who she really was: a selfish, manipulative woman who would do anything to get what she wanted. The pain was real, but so was the strength I found in standing up for myself. I knew I had to move forward, no matter how difficult that was. I made peace with the fact that the marriage was over. There was no saving what was broken beyond repair. The woman I married was gone, replaced by someone who only cared about herself and her greed. I was angry at her, yes, but also disappointed in myself for not seeing it sooner. Lesson learned: never ignore the signs, never trust blindly, and always protect what's yours. Money, trust, dignity, these are things you can't just give away because of love. Sometimes love blinds you, and you only see the betrayal when it's too late. Now I'm focused on rebuilding my life. I've cut ties with her completely, changed my phone number, and hired new lawyers to finalize the divorce. I've also started therapy to deal with the emotional fallout. It's not easy, but I know I'll come out stronger. The betrayal has left scars, but it's also made me more cautious, more aware of what I need to protect. I've learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply moving on and proving that you're better off without someone who doesn't value you. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown from this nightmare. I've learned to trust my instincts more, to be cautious with who I let into my life, and to stand my ground when it counts. The most important thing I want anyone reading this to take away is this: don't ever let someone take advantage of your kindness or your trust. Be vigilant, protect yourself, and don't be afraid to fight for what's right. Because in the end, the only person who truly has your back is yourself. And no matter how much you love someone, sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do.